Okay, in this lesson, we are going to learn the difference between ser and estar. And we're going to start with the verb estar. In the 6th edition of Ariba, the Pearson textbook Ariba, the verb estar is introduced to you on page 98. In the 5th edition, it's on page 97. Now, on the page in the book, it does not give the words behind me, but the idea is there. So let's start with the idea of what is actually on page 98. They have the conjugation of the verb, which I'll get to a little bit later. But they have at the bottom of the page a list of words that go with the star. And those groups of words on that page go with the first 2 letters I have on the board behind me here, the H and the E. The H is for health or physical states, and the E is for emotions. So, for example, you have the word enojado at the bottom of the page. That would be angry. You have the word cansado, which is tired. That would be a physical state. You have the word enfermo, which is sick. That would be health. And those words are all either health or physical states or emotions. And those are the first 2 categories of remembering a verb estar. The third category, the L, is location. And in the previous edition of the book, you would find the words on page 91. In this edition, they're on page 93. And those words are location words, like next to, close, far from, and you find those words in the vocabulary. And those are clues that you're talking about location when you would use the verb estar. So thus far we've had health, physical states, and emotions, all those words in one list. And then we have another group of words that are in the vocabulary page. And then finally we have the P, which is for the present progressive tense. The present progressive tense in English would be something like, I am eating. You have a form of the verb to be with an ing word. And in Spanish, the form of the verb to be would be the verb estar, not ser, but estar, and an ing word. And that particular combination you won't see in the Ariba textbook until actually chapter 5. So I put it with my H, my E, and my L to get my word help. But in chapter 3 of the book, which is what I'm teaching this lesson for, you don't have the present progressive tense just yet. So to review, to remember what sorts of things go with the star, there are all sorts of temporary things like health, or physical states, emotions, location, or the present progressive tense. Okay, now this is the second half of our ser estar demonstration. We did the star just a moment ago. Now we're going to do the verb ser. Now the verb ser has more permanency to it as opposed to estar. Estar is temporary, ser is more permanent. If you've been studying from the book that I'm doing these lessons for, the Ariba textbook that's published by Pearson, you've already had a lot of the words that go in this first category in chapters 1 and 2 of the book. The basic characteristics category includes things that are either permanent or semi-permanent. And by semi-permanent, I mean they don't change very fast. An example of a permanent category, for the most part at least, is height. Él es alto, he is tall. So the word tall is a basic characteristic of the man. Or you might say, ella es bonita. Okay, that she is pretty. Now, pretty is something that sometimes changes. It fades with age occasionally, but usually at least it doesn't change overnight. It's a semi-permanent characteristic. Another semi-permanent characteristic would be weight. Él es gordo, or el perro es gordo. The dog is fat. He is fat. Fat is something that changes slowly, if at all. It doesn't happen overnight. Although for those of us who are fat, sometimes we felt like it happened overnight, but it did not. And so these basic characteristics are things that are part of who the person is. And they're things that either don't change at all, or if they do, they change slowly. The O that I have here is to talk about where the person is from. And you'll see this in a couple of forms. You'll see with the verb, with the word de, for example. Él es de Panama. He is from Panama. And so his origin would be, he is from a certain country. But the nationality from that country would also indicate his origin. Él es panameño. He is Panamanian. And so that would also be origin. The second O in my word boot here is for occupation. And that's like lawyer, doctor, Indian chief, that sort of thing. Now, in the Ariba textbook, you haven't had many of these words up to this point in chapter 3. You've had the word teacher and the word student, and those are the main two words that you've had. But if, for example, I want to say she is a teacher, I would say ella es profesora. I would use the form of the verb ser with that. Or I might want to say él es estudiante. He is a student. Again, I'd use the form of the verb ser with that. And my final letter here, my B-O-O-T, the word boot, is time and date. If you're studying from the Pearson textbook in chapter 2, you learn how to tell time, and you know you use the verb ser for that. We have also already talked about dates. For example, you might say, mi cumpleaños es el 17 de marzo, the 17th of March. Es, you use time to talk about, ser to talk about time or date. Or you might say, hoy es viernes, today is Friday. Again, that's a time reference or a date reference. So these four letters, B, O, O, and T, stand for basic characteristics, origin, occupation, and time or date. And these things, which are relatively permanent things, are things that you use the verb ser to talk about. Okay, now, in the next part of this video, we're going to talk about when to use ser and when to use estar, and we're going to have sentences. But first, I'm going to talk about the conjugation of these two verbs. I'm going to start with the verb estar, which is new to you in chapter 3. And I want to point out that for the most part, it's a regular AR verb. It has regular AR verb endings. It has a Y and a yo form. So instead of esto, it's estoy. Now, one other thing that's weird about estar is it has accents. If I numbered the slots, and slots 2, 3, and 6 would be where you find the extra accent. The to form, the el, ella, usted form, and the ellos, ellas, ustedes form. Those three. And you see the accents there. Okay. Now, those are the conjugations for estar. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. Now let's look at the conjugations for ser. And you would have had these way back in chapter 1. In the old edition, it was page 26. The new edition on page 24 would be where you'd find this verb, as well as the subject pronouns. Okay, so soy is I am, eres is you are, es is like is, but usted es would be you are, somos is we are, sois goes with the vosotros, vosotros sois would be you are, and then son in Latin America is either they or you plural. They are, ellos son, you are, ustedes son. So this goes with both they and the plural you. Okay, now here we're using the forms of ser and estar, and we are trying to figure out which verb to use. Let's look at number 1, Ramon blank de Texas. Okay, now, Ramon is from Texas. Okay, that's origin, then, isn't it? That's where he is from. I could also have had the word Texano after the blank to say he is Texan, and that would also be a form of the verb ser. Now, in this case, I need something to go with Ramon to match Ramon in gender and number. Okay, so Ramon would be he. That would be he is. We're using ser. Okay, that would be es. Ramon es de Texas. Let's go to number 2. Okay, she is bonita. Bonita. Okay, that's one of the adjectives that we got in chapter 2. That's the word pretty. And again, that's something that changes sometimes, not always. But if it does change, it usually doesn't change overnight. It's a semi-permanent characteristic. So that would also be ser. And let's see, she would get the same conjugation as Ramon. He and she would both be is. That would be es then. Okay? Number 3. Okay, she is enferma. If you look at your words on page 97 in the 5th edition or 98 in the new edition, you see that enfermo is the masculine singular word for sick. And this is she is sick. That's a physical state. So that's my health and physical state letter with the star, the H. And so we need a form of a star to go with she. Okay, the he, she form of Estar. Estar is a regular AR verb, so it's going to be EST, that's my stem, plus the A. And in this case, the third person singular is one of the three that has the accent. So it's Estar, E-S-T-A, with an accent on the A. Okay, let's go to number 4. La casa blank muy lejos de aquí. All right, lejos de is far from. That's one of the vocabulary words on either page 91 in the 5th edition or 93 in the new edition. And that's a location word. So location is a form of Estar, and the subject is la casa, the house. That'd be like it, and it is the same as she as far as the verb goes. That would be está. La casa está muy lejos de aquí. Okay. And this last one, la mesa blank de Pablo. Okay, now, the mesa is Pablo. The table, this is a way of showing that it belongs to Pablo, but showing possession, which is sort of a subset of origin. The table came from Pablo. That was the table's origin. And so origin is one of my O's in my B-O-O-T that goes with ser. And so it would be S. Now there is another category of ser that sort of goes in here in the basic characteristics. I could say, for example, la mesa es de madera. Madera is wood, so it would be a wooden table. That would be a basic characteristic. So basically, anytime you have a de right after the blank, it's either talking about origin or what something is made out of. In both of those cases, it will be some form of the verb ser.